everybody. My name's Jeff. I'm a SME and also a coach who works with people in the construction industry.
Hey everyone, I'm Rochelle. I'm a proposal management consultant in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry.
And this
is Burnout Banter.
So this month, we're going to be talking about core values. How many of you, when I talk about core values, think about your company's core values?
Hi.
Yeah. How many of you actually know your company's core values?
Not I.
Yeah, probably not as many as the leaders of our companies would hope, right? But I bet even less of you could rattle off your own top 5 core values if I pressed you on the subject.
Absolutely not, but I'm hoping by the end of the episode I will be able to.
Yeah, me too. So you might be thinking right now, what does my core values have to do with burnout? Well,
I am.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's find out.
Awesome.
So when I talk about core values, Rochelle, what do you think of?
That for me is like your prime programming. Like what drives you forward, what makes you do what you do, what makes you make the decisions that you make. Like what is your core programming as a human being that keeps you moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great definition of it. You know, it's kind of our moral compass. We all
I want a little more AI.
Yeah, we all have core values, right? I just don't know that many of us take a lot of time and think about what they are and, you know, actively use them to guide our decision making.
That sounds like introspection, and I don't know how I feel about taking a look inside, Jeff. I don't know how a lot of people feel about taking a look inside.
But, you know, it also, our morals or our core values drive us to, you know, achieve our goals and achieve success, which kind of ties into what we talked about in the first episode too. So.
Okay, I can see how introspection might be important. So proceed.
Yeah. Introspection was important with success. So it's going to be important here with core values too.
Perfect.
Where do you think they come from?
These core values or these moral compass core values? I feel like that's going to be a mix of influences. Like it'll come from your home life, your family life, like what you grew up with probably significantly influences what's important to you later on. But it might also come with, you know, the circles that you've surrounded yourself with, like your friends, your employers. I feel like we just have a ton of outside influences telling us what's supposed to be important. And we have to figure out for ourselves.
And at times our family, you know, it can actually go the opposite way too, right? So we may have experienced something growing up that we now want to experience the exact opposite of. So we create a value that way by going in the exact opposite direction. But there's a lot of social conditioning when it comes to it, and, you know, what we consume in the news and online and through other people's opinions, podcasts.
What? No, we're not influencing anybody, subliminally messaging them.
So why do you think knowing your core values is important then?
There's this phrase that you'll hear a lot, like where you, if you don't stand for something, you fall for everything. I'm sure you've heard that. I think Katy Perry put it in a song once. Just to throw some pop culture at you, ancient pop culture, because I'm like stuck 20 years ago. But I feel like it's important to know what's important to you. That way, if you get challenged or if you're in a situation where you don't know what to do, you can use that moral compass, I guess, to figure out like, okay, I'm being, for proposal person right here, I'm being asked to stay late. And if I do that, I'm going to miss a key life event in my personal life. Like, what's important to you? Do you stay late and work on this proposal, or do you go to this life event that's never going to happen again? I feel like it's a really important thing for your moral compass, for these core values to help guide you in those situations.
Yeah, it really plays a role in our decision making, and for most of us, it happens at a subconscious level. You know, we're not really thinking, what are my values here when we are faced with a tough decision? But if we know what they are, it can actually help us make decisions a lot easier and stand for things that we want to stand for, because we're aware of why we're doing it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I had a thought and I wanted to pitch it at you. But that situation that I just gave you, do you think that because we make those decisions subconsciously and we're not, maybe always fully aware of what our core values are, like, do you think that's just a visceral reaction and less of a logical one? Like, I'm scared to leave work, so I'm going to stay, even though it's like family is the most important thing in the world to me.
Yeah.
Like, how do you balance those?
Yeah, your emotions are making that decision for you. And then we use logic to justify the decision that we made in that moment. So if we decide to stay at work, the emotion that's probably driving that is fear.
Right. Our favorite thing.
We're afraid of what's going to happen if we don't.
Right.
And then we use logic like, oh, well, I'm going to get promoted and I'll get a raise and they'll heap accolation on me, or things like that, right? That we use to justify why we just missed a big life event that was important to us.
And maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but like how, because emotions are so powerful, that fear is so powerful, like how will having these logical core values, like even if I wrote family is the most important thing in the world to me on my computer, like that fear is still going to drive me to make that decision. Is like, can we balance those two out? Like, is understanding that core value, like how do we get that to be more important than the fear? Like, how do we tamp down that fear with these core values? Did I jump ahead?
No, not at all. So you have to first be aware that your emotions are taking over and that potentially fear is wanting to make a decision for you, which most of us don't have that awareness.
Absolutely not.
We jump to the logic, right? And we're using the logic to justify why we made the decision. But having awareness is important. And then, in that moment, if you have awareness that, oh, fear is about ready to make this decision for me, if family is one of my really important core values, how might I make this decision differently?
Okay.
So to me, it's that conscious of a thing.
So this sounds like something we need to really practice thinking about.
Yes. And I also think it can reframe how you're looking at that decision, right? Like work versus this really important life event. Because you're seeing what's really important in the life event because
Right.
what your values are and what's important to you. Whereas if you don't know that, it's just, well, it's this really important life event. I don't really know why. I may feel it, but I don't really know why it's important to me. So I'll stay at work.
Okay. And that feeling is maybe not quite comparable to the fear. So it gets overwritten.
It's overwritten. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we need to go back to the defining of those core values so we can make sure that we make the right decision in that situation.
Well, I think decision making is the biggest place where knowing our core values can really help us. I heard Darren Hardy talking about one time, he knows what his core values are, and he either has to say hell yes to something that it's aligned with his values, or the answer is a no.
Ooh, I like that.
And I think Warren Buffett's very similar, right? Like, anytime you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So can I figure out a way to really, I'm going to start with no, and then somebody has to talk me into why it should be a yes.
Interesting. Proposal people take note. If you say yes to something, you are saying no to something. If you say yes to an additional proposal, you're saying no to free time and me time.
Yeah, that's true.
It's always just wanted to underscore, highlight that one, like big bold letters, neon, like Broadway lights. I think that's really important for my crew.
Yeah, and when we are able to align, and live our core, align our core values with the way we're living our life, it really, that's us running at full speed ahead, right? Like nothing's going to get in our way.
I would love to do that.
Yeah.
How do I do that, Jeff?
Okay, that's a great question.
Guinea pig.
So we need to figure out what they
are. Yes.
So there are lots of lists of common core values that you can start with, but I like to, pay attention to times when you're happy or you're proud of yourself or you're feeling really fulfilled.
Okay.
What were you doing in that moment? And
Ooh.
what's
Yeah.
contributing to those feelings that you're having?
Okay. Let's see.
Ideas?
We've talked before about I'm a creative-ish person. I feel very content when I am writing or painting or drawing. Like I just feel very calm and still when I'm doing those things, which is something I don't get a lot of when I'm proposal writing. Um, and also like I have, if I think back just on like the last year, I have standout moments of like being around family and being around friends that just they really stick out to me, maybe because they're a little bit not as common compared to the rest of my pace of life. I apologize to all of my friends out there. I am notorious for flaking and canceling on plans. I'm the worst, and it's something I'm getting better at. You heard it right here. I'm trying. So, family, friends, creativity, I guess I would distill that down.
Okay. And what's interesting, right? So I think about proposal writing, and I get that there is a prescribed thing that you're, trying to follow or answer questions or, a
Mhm.
format you're trying to hold to. But I think of proposal writing as extremely creative.
It can
As an
be.
engineer,
That's true. That's true. It can be. I do get to do a lot of really fun things where I'm writing about just these amazing projects or experiences. I've just wrapped up two of the most exciting proposals I think I've written in my entire career. And I did get to do a lot of creative writing about things I'd never seen before. But I think because I have to do those, like I don't get that same kind of calm. I have not chosen to write about these things. I am not
could
being
be.
forced. I mean, I have chosen because I took on the project, but I'm being told what I'm being creative about.
Yeah.
Whereas if I sit down for me, I'm like, I'm gonna write about magical space unicorns. I don't know, like as
Yeah.
opposed to renovating like a building from the 1960s or a historic structure that's got this crazy story behind it. So yeah, they're different to me in a way.
Yeah. And I was about ready to challenge you. So I'm glad you caught yourself and saying that you don't have to. You are choosing to.
I am choosing to. That's another thing that we're
But do
working
you
on here.
do you see how if knowing creativity is really important to you, you could look at that as a creative task that you're doing when maybe if you don't know that creativity is really important to you, you're looking at it as a potentially redundant task or it's not something you chose to write about, so you're not being creative. But that's up to each of us to decide what that means too.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I feel like maybe kind of being more aware of that creative portion might portion of my moral compass might change how I take on projects in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, I adore all of my current clients, every one of you, if you're listening. And I'm being honest, not like don't fire me, please. I legitimately do really care about all of my clients. But there are projects that are more creative and they're more fulfilling to complete. And so maybe that's something moving forward that like I take on more of those and less of the slog proposals.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about that in the past, like work that you do as an engineer that just pays the bills versus the really exciting, fun stuff.
Yeah. Things that drain you versus things that give you energy.
Yes, that conversation. Thank you. Apparently I thought I was 100% human today. I'm at like 75. Dang it.
So the other thing you can do is look at times where you've had your greatest inner conflict.
Oh, I don't like that.
No?
I'm conflict avoidant to the max.
But like you're doing something where like something just feels off, or you worked with a client where it just doesn't seem to match, right? Like what's creating that conflict in how they're behaving or how you're having to go about something that may be misaligned with what your values are. So you can think of that's another way you can figure out what your core values are.
Interesting. It's like taking the negative approach. Not that it's negative, but for me, it's like a backwards, like what caused the problem? What was the negative aspect of this thing?
But a lot of us are probably much more aware of that, right? Because we like to live in the complaining and the conflict.
I absolutely pulled up 2 examples.
Woe is me. I can't do anything about this. So we might be much more aware of what's creating conflict than we are, when we're feeling fulfilled and happy and proud, especially if you're burned out.
This is true. You get burned out, you get stuck in that trench of awfulness, and all you can see is the awfulness around you. Yeah. Maybe that is the way to swim out. You just kind of look around and see, not to like really dig into it and lean into it, but maybe look around and see what's causing all of that negativity.
Yeah. And if you are stuck, there's lists of common core values. I have one. If people want to message us, I'd be more than happy to share it with you if you want to try it out.
Absolutely.
That's a good way to start too. So you're not just starting completely from scratch.
I would appreciate that. I'm someone who likes to see examples. I'll never forget taking a grad school level creativity course. And the first thing they taught us was how to steal like an artist. So it's all about, looking at examples and seeing how you can do it better or emulate.
Well, that's
so I like the list.
That's how I like to do proposals.
And I would tell you that's not good. While I'm over here stealing like an artist. Which I think is also a book. Would highly recommend.
Okay. So once you've come up with a list, I would recommend 3 to 5. You don't probably go much beyond that because then it's just too much to keep track of. So over the course of a week, write down ways that you see those values playing out in your life as kind of a way to test them.
So like how they have played out, or like how you would have liked them to have played out that week?
Like during the week, if you're paying attention to times when you're creative, like how did you feel when you were creative? What were you doing that was making you creative? When did you not feel creative?
When did I sit on my couch and wistfully imagine that I was writing instead, but was too tired to do so?
Yeah. Sometimes rest is important too.
Yes. It is okay. Side note, it is okay to recover and then go align with your values. Yeah.
So then you're kind of testing them out as you go, right? So you can see if they really are your values or not.
Interesting. And what if you find one that's not?
Then try another one.
You make it sound so simple. Okay.
Well, what I think what's important with this is to not get wrapped up in what we think our values should be.
Right.
And really try to listen to ourselves and what's important to us, because there is so much outside influence on what our values should be.
It's hard to shut that down though.
It is. I think that's why the testing out is important, right? Because you could come up with some, maybe you're influenced from the outside, maybe you're not, but you get to see, is that really important to me or not?
How do you balance I think my core values are being creative, being around family and friends. What if, so just for example, as a psycho proposal person of the last 2 weeks, what if, as I'm like testing these things out or kind of writing down like what I've prioritized in my day, I've found that like work is constantly coming up to the top, or like taking care of my clients is up to the top. Is that then a core value? Like taking care of my clients is super important to me? Or is that, how do I differentiate between that being a core value and that being like something fear-driven or programmed into me? Like I feel good about making my clients happy, but I'm exhausted. Like how do you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. Like you mentioned, family and friends, right? Like, so family could definitely be a core value. But I would try to think even a little bit more about like, what do you get from being around family or friends? Like, is it fun? Is it, I don't know. I should have my list up here. When you're taking care of your employee or taking care of your clients, is that caring? Is that, some people do like to work hard, right? Like hard work could be a value. So I think it's just playing around with it and seeing what feels like it fits. And yes, I get that you're tired and you had a rough couple of weeks pushing through some proposals, but at the end of it, did you feel really, satisfied and rewarded? Maybe not immediately when you're done and still tired, but upon reflection, like you.
Oh no, those went in and I was like, this was awesome.
Yeah.
Like the process was a little rough, but like I just put in 2 of the best proposals I think I've ever written. These were so good. So yeah, I'm like, is that I don't want to be the workaholic core value
I don't think it's
but
work,
am I?
So I don't think it's work that is your core value as a result of that. It's something else that's maybe below the surface. And that's where having the list could help you identify what that is. Like one of mine is passionate.
Okay.
So maybe there's some passion there for you. Maybe there's caring,
Maybe.
So having the list, I think, would help you kind of identify what that is, but it's probably not working hard.
Okay, good to know. I'm
Unless
trying to
you
not
like
be
in
a
general, like
workaholic.
whatever you do, right? You work hard. Knowing you, I don't
determined.
think. Knowing you, I'm not sure that's
Ouch! Oh no! Just kidding.
No, that's a good thing.
So I
think it's something
the easiest way out. All right. So it sounds like I have some homework to do to figure out what my values are. And hopefully everybody listening will do that with me.
Yeah.
Maybe we can figure that out together.
So, creative, right? So what does that mean to you when we talk about creativity? Because we've already talked about how you and I have very different definitions of what creativity is.
True.
So what's yours?
For me, creativity is kind of like breaking boundaries. Like when I say I'm a creative writer, I mean not just like the ideas, but also kind of the way and cadence that I write. I like to break the rules, which is why I have to use a grammar editor for my proposal writing to check my creativity hasn't leaked into my proposal writing sometimes. And it's just like I think because I live in so much structure as a proposal person, like you said earlier, you're responding to specific requirements. You're living within this realm of checkboxes. So for me, creativity is about getting outside of those checkboxes. Like if I'm staring at a blank page or staring at a blank canvas or whatever it is, I am entirely in control of what I put on those. And that for me is being creative.
Yeah. So it's really important to know that because you're going to want to be able to identify times when you are being creative. So to me, it's really important that the core value is not just a word.
Okay.
That we actually define what that word means to us, write a sentence about it. How will you know that you're actually being creative?
Ooh.
If that makes sense.
It does. But now I'm going back with how I just described creativity and I use like the words control. And it sounds very uncreative. So now I have to think about that. But okay, so like dig a little bit deeper and find the why. We love asking why here.
Yeah. So like
Banter.
if passionate,
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if passionate is one of mine. So my sentence that goes with it is care deeply about what you do, how you do it, who you do it with, and who you do it for.
Oh, I love that. Can I just steal that one? That's what I was trying to get at. I totally, absolutely, that's what I was saying earlier. Yeah.
Like I can use that sentence to know if I'm being passionate or not, right? Am I caring deeply right now?
Okay. Are you passionate about this podcast?
Yes, I'm very much passionate.
Okay, good. Side note. I had to ask. I had to throw that one out there. Okay, so for me, creativity would be like, is this allowing me to express myself in an unrestricted way.
Yeah, expressing myself in an unrestricted way.
How's that for flipping control on its head?
Yeah. Yeah, or like I another one of mine is curious. So striving each day to become an evolved version of yourself.
Ooh, that sounds that like meme with the guy who's like just otherworldly galactic, just like went to another plane of existence. That's what that sounds like to me. You just like took it to a whole new level.
So it's good to have. I think it's good to have a sentence that goes with your core value. And I think companies at times just give a word to, and it's really important that they define it. And how do we know that we're being passionate or being creative or being curious? What does that actually?
Sorry, I just had thoughts. Like my brain is going 1,000 different directions now. Trying to chase down all of my core values. I know like you want your core values and where you work, like you want to align as much as possible, right? But like if you pick a word and they pick a word and it's the same word, sorry to clarify, if you both pick the same word, but you define it differently, can you still be in alignment?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So I worked at a company whose tagline was improving life for the better built environment.
Oh,
I would guess if knowing what I know, if I asked them what that meant, it would be like building buildings that have a positive impact on people and the environment and things like that. That didn't really resonate as much with me, but I hung on to the improving life. So how could I improve life for my employees and for the clients that we're working with? And so, yes, we're working on buildings, but I'm trying to improve their life and how we're working on the building too. So I think
okay.
as long as you can find something that resonates with you in
Okay.
that, if you didn't care about life or buildings, it's probably not the company for you.
What if the company only cared about the building part and the life part was just because it sounded nice, this tagline? I can't tell you how many companies say like our people are so important to us and they don't act on that. Like, how do you know if they actually care until you're in it?
Because they've defined what that means, hopefully. And
It's
then
true.
you can see how they're behaving and is it in alignment with what they're saying? Because how we act and what we do is way more important than what we say.
True. So what I'm hearing is that maybe when we go into interviews and ask about core values, it's not just what are your core values, it's how are you acting upon them.
Yeah.
For my proposal people, that might be a really great interview question. Just throwing that out there.
Question, right? Like you say your value is blah, blah, blah. How well you know that I'm doing that, or how do you reward people when they behave that way? Things like that. Reward, acknowledge. Maybe acknowledge is a better word than reward, but
I'd like a reward every now and again. It'd be nice.
yeah. So no, I do think that's really important. And if you are at a company where it's just totally out of alignment, you're probably having a lot of inner turmoil about it, and maybe figuring out why might help you, see, is there a way forward where this could potentially be fixed, or are we just totally at odds here with what we think is important, and that may not ever be resolved.
That's true. If you're at a company that values innovation and you're still writing proposals in Word and Microsoft PowerPoint, maybe not in alignment.
Yeah.
Just a thought for the low-hanging fruit right there. Do you have any
if
other?
Anybody wants examples of mine, they're on my website.
Oh, perfect. I was just going to ask you if you had any more.
Yeah, I do. I have 5.
Say it again because I was talking over you.
Reclaim-me.org on the About Jeff page.
Perfect.
So yeah, I have 5.
I have 1 now.
You have more.
And I will find the rest.
You just haven't defined them yet. I know they're in there.
They are. That just is introspection. And as we discussed earlier, that's not something I love to do. So Jeff's just making me break out of all of
your core values.
It is not. And it's not all of my friends would tell you that. They see me very clearly, and I'm like, wait, no.
Yeah. So what does this have to do with burnout?
Yes, let's bring it around.
Right. So to me, our core values help us set boundaries.
Very important. How do they do that?
Yeah, it's what we're, what we're willing and not willing to do. Well, how do we know if we don't know what our values are?
True.
So once we know our values, we can see what behavior is acceptable and what behavior is not acceptable to us, and what we're going to tolerate and not tolerate, and then we get to set and enforce them based on what we've decided our core values are.
So deciding whether to stay at work or go to
Yeah.
that once in a lifetime life event, even no matter how small it is, whatever it is.
Right. So we get to decide what our boundaries are. They're unique for each of us. What works for somebody else may not work for you, and that's okay. And what works for you may not work for somebody else, and that's okay too.
How do we reconcile that struggle? Like if one of my core values is hard work and I'm willing to stay, but stay at the office, and one of my teammates puts the family first core value. I know I'm distilling them down into a single word. I don't have time for a sentence.
It's okay. I didn't expect that we would leave here in 30 to 45 minutes, but
with 5 sentences. Okay, so I'm the work hard and my teammate is the, family first or whatever it is. And they leave. And like, I see this a lot in teams where they'll look at each other and say, okay, you're not putting in the effort or you're not pulling your weight. Like, how do you reconcile your core values if they don't mesh in your team?
Well, I think if you really believe in your core values, you can look at that situation and say, one of my core values is hard work, and I've chosen to be here and do this. And one of their values is family, and they've chosen to not be here and do that. And neither of us is wrong.
Right.
So it's okay.
I just feel like a lot of times we want to impose our core values without even thinking about it. Like you said, a lot of these are subconscious. Impose those on someone else. So, I mean, we have no control over someone trying to impose their hard work core value on us. But
yeah, and I was talking to a client yesterday who was struggling with his dad, and he's at a job where he really, I think for the most part, likes his job. It's not the best schedule, and it impacts other people in his family. So when his family is talking to him about his job, it's like, oh yeah, this sucks. This schedule's awful and blah, blah, blah. But then when it's just, I was asking my client, I was like, if it's just him, do you think he really likes his job and likes what he does for the most part? Yes, there are always things that are wrong with every job that we have, but
right.
At a core level, based on his values, is it in alignment, even though it may not be in alignment with what you think or what his wife thinks? So yeah. And then we do try to push our stuff on other people,
Which again, we can't control. So I guess it goes back to everything you've just been saying about we need to know ourselves well enough to know when someone's trying to put their core value on us. Like maybe we are still a hard worker, but clocking out at 5 to go to that soccer game is important. I don't know.
I can tell you I will never be as hard of a worker as Elon Musk. And I will probably never be a billionaire because I don't work as hard as Elon Musk. That may work well for him, how hard he works. It does not work well for me, and I have zero interest in it, and that's okay.
Does it work for him? I just
no.
I mean, until recently, maybe, but yeah, no, that constant go, like, not to get into the grind and hustle culture, but I don't think that's for me either. I think we kind of align on that, but
yeah,
I think there's a difference between the hard work and the hustle.
Yeah, and I think when we really embrace our core values, what we start to realize is that our boundaries have nothing to do with anybody else.
They shouldn't.
Right.
But separating them out.
But our inability to hold them has to do with us, not other people too.
Yeah. Going back to being conflict avoidant, like my core value, when it goes up against someone else's core value, is probably going to crumble. So it's something I guess I need to work on.
But it's crumbling because of the emotion, right? That we talked about at the beginning, the fear of what's going to happen if I stick.
Oh, absolutely. If I stick to my core value and we just continue to collide, like, I don't want to deal with that. I'm afraid to deal with that. So,
yeah.
And I think that's also okay. Like we said, practice. You don't have to be great at instilling your core values or sticking to them right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you're still figuring out what your sentences are, like some of us.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, when we do make decisions in alignment with our values, what that allows us to do is be at peace with whatever the outcome is. And the outcome may suck. And it may be great. But as long as I made the decision in alignment with my values, I'm going to be able to live with that.
True. I'd rather make a decision that has a negative outcome for good reasons than make a decision that has a negative outcome for the wrong reasons.
You know, if I go rob a bank and get away with it, and I now have millions of dollars, if robbing a bank is not in alignment with my core values, even though that turned out really amazing because I have $1 million, I'm probably going to have some problems with it.
Just a little bit of guilt, you know. So, you'll go Robin Hood. You'll, give to the poor, make it all feel better.
So it can go really great too, but still be in misalignment with our values, and then we still don't feel very good about it.
That's true. That goes back to the very first episode where we were talking about, getting promotions, being at the top of, the food chain. But if it's not in alignment with your personal core values, you're not going to be happy there.
Yeah, and we get rewarded a lot for things that we do that are in misalignment with our values, right? Like if you are working a lot, there is some reward in that for you. You may be getting promoted, you may be getting more money, you may be getting accolades that you wouldn't be getting otherwise. And so that can be really seductive.
Right. And you don't realize that you're unhappy until you're burnt out.
Right.
So all of this is about pre-burnout, trying to prevent or course correct if you are starting to burn out, I think.
Yeah. So this can be a way to help you see, maybe why you're burning out, because you're potentially doing things that aren't in alignment with your values.
Absolutely.
Anything else about values?
No, I'm going to go write a few things down on my whiteboard and start tracking my life for the next month, and I'll check back in.
Well, let me know if you want the list of core values.
Oh, I absolutely want the list of core values. I need it. You can hit us up on LinkedIn to share the core values and sentences that you came up with. As someone who wants to steal like an artist, please send me some inspiration, y'all.
And now it's time for burning questions.
So for burning questions, we got a question that is in line with what we've been talking about today. So the question was, how do I set boundaries and not get in trouble for it?
Oh, I love a thematic tie-in. And I feel like I danced around this in my interrogation of you this episode. So that was fun. And I didn't even know. I didn't know what the question was because I'm a terrible co-host and didn't prep. So how do we set boundaries and not get in trouble for them, Jeff?
The answer is we don't.
Oh, I don't like that.
We could get in trouble if we set a boundary. I mean, getting in trouble, right? Could there be consequences for setting a boundary?
Probably.
That are negative?
Definitely. Yeah. Sorry, as a proposal person that has been consequenced on. Yes.
So if you're setting a boundary in hopes that nothing bad happens, you're probably going to waver on your boundary at the time of.
So if you're trying to set this boundary at this like pivotal point Right.
Yes.
And you're afraid, or you're anticipating already what this boundary, like what the consequences of setting that boundary are. You might not do it, which I think is common for proposal people.
Yeah, you won't
Or if
stick
you,
to it.
yeah, you won't stick to it. Going back to that like core value wrestling, my core value will crumble historically, not anymore. Now that we've had this talk, but historically I would crumble because I would get, strong armed into stay late or take an extra assignment or whatever it was. How do we quiet that part of our mind that's saying, if you set this boundary, this bad thing is going to happen?
It goes back to your core values. If you are in alignment with your core values, yes, something bad could happen. And if it does, you will be okay. Might it suck? Yes. But you'll know that you did the right thing. And I think, that will help us move past am I going to get in trouble for this? Because you could. It could go great too.
Want to define trouble and
Sure.
why you're getting in trouble real quick. So for me as a proposal person, the first thing I think of when I hear setting boundaries is, no, I'm not going to, pick up these edits at 5:00 on a Friday and have them due at 8 a.m. on Monday. Like that's 0 business hours for me to do this. But if I don't do that and we miss a deadline, I get in trouble. And that trouble probably looks like some sort of reprimand, or I have to sit down with management and we go over how committed am I to this team and am I really involved and blah, blah, blah. So I feel like knowing the trouble that you might get into will help you stay out of it. So like if you can anticipate that this is coming up, or if you put that boundary in place and you don't pick up those edits, and then you say the reason that you did it was because you had 0 business hours to do it, you can help mitigate that, I think, a little bit. Like I'm not getting paid weekend hours. I'm not getting paid overtime. A lot of, unfortunately, proposal people are salaried. Like if you've already hit your hours and they're asking you to do more, you're not getting paid for it. So you could argue against it and put them in kind of an uncomfortable position also, which I'm not advocating for negativity against negativity, but just like be prepared for what the trouble might be and how you can respond to it.
Yeah.
Jeff's I can see it on his face. He's going against me.
No, I think having, planning for the worst case, or, saying, no, I'm not going to do this, but this is what I will do, is a great way to go about that. But we can get ourselves in a lot of trouble trying to predict what the outcome of saying, no, I'm not going to do this could be, because we're going to assume the worst case, which is the whole thing that you just outlined, even probably to the point of getting fired. And then how am I going to pay my bills and, all that stuff.
We don't need to spiral.
Right. So that's what fear is going to tell us is going to happen, at which point you will not stick to your value and say no.
Right.
You could say no and they say, okay, great. When can you get it done by?
That'd be beautiful.
It would be, right? Or they could say, too bad, I don't care, you're doing it anyways, right? Now you get to make the choice of, do I do this and not have these bad things happen, or do I not? But a lot of us just immediately think of the bad things that are going to happen and do it without even having the conversation. And I think that's where we get ourselves into trouble.
Because we don't know. Yeah. We don't know what's going to happen. We can't control the actions of others.
Right.
So.
Have there been times where I've worked overtime? Yes, absolutely. But it's when I've realized why I'm doing it, then it's my choice. And it can be more in alignment with my values than feeling like I had to just because.
Because you were told to.
Or maybe I wasn't even told to.
Oh, I'm always told to. Not maybe directly, but it's like a.
Yeah, most people are not that direct.
Well, not usually.
I mean, I was working on a project for a client who this project literally sat on the shelf for 2 years.
Wow.
Came back. We need this in 2 weeks. Okay, great. That's going to kill everybody if we do that, which we're willing to do. But can we talk about why you need this project in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, we're really not doing any.
Please.
Yeah, we're really not doing anything with it for a month and a half. This is when we really need it.
So
Okay,
this is arbitrary.
why do we need it in 2 weeks? Yeah, that's what somebody did. Somebody just said, nope, we're doing it in 2 weeks because we want to make a good impression on the client. And we're going to kill everybody in the meantime. Well, if we had just said yes, we would have killed everybody and probably gotten it done. It would have sucked. But
Yeah.
by saying, hey, what are you doing with it? It actually got us some extra time and we could do a better job. And so, the answer might have been, yeah, in 2 weeks, we're doing this and we need it. Great. Now we at least know why we're killing ourselves. And we, I guess, can choose whether we want to do that project or not.
That is wild. That's wild.
But that happens all the time. And we, as consultants, we don't even ask. What are you
Even
doing?
in-house, I didn't ask.
Yeah, in-house.
Why do you need me to do this? Why is this my responsibility?
Yeah.
So
I think, can I guarantee that you're not going to get in trouble if you set boundaries? No, I can't. But if you do, and let's say you were to get fired, is that really a place you wanted to work anyways, if that's how they're going to treat you?
also true.
Sounds like it's pretty misaligned with your own values if that's not, how you want to spend your time and behave. So there is no guarantee that bad things will not happen to us.
You heard it here first.
But if we did something in alignment with our values and something bad happens, I think, upon reflection and upon space and time, we can be okay if that's what happened.
It goes back to your robbing a bank example. Your boss asks you to rob a bank and you say no because it's against your core values and you get fired. You're probably going to feel pretty good about that decision.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
maybe just distill everything a little bit, put it in perspective before you panic.
Yeah, and that's it. Right?
Panicker.
In the moment, right? If we don't realize that fear has taken over, you have to work or else you're going to get fired and all this bad stuff's going to happen. Then we're just going to say yes immediately, and then we're going to have regret later that we did this. So can we say, okay, I see what's happening. These are my values. If I were to act in accordance with my values, this is what I would do. Try it and see what happens.
I like it.
Told to do it anyways. Then you get to decide if you want to do it anyways or not. But you made the choice at that point, and you can live with that.
I hope so. If you've figured out your core values, you should definitely be able to live with your decision. Yeah,
and sometimes we do things that we don't want to do.
Yeah, we don't have magic answers here, folks.
It's what's in the best, what we think is in our best interest for us at that time.
That's true. Survival mode activated. You just got to get through. But if you can get through as true to yourself as possible, it's going to be less painful on the other side, for sure. I'm at the point where I'm not even making sense anymore. I'm just throwing things out there.
Yeah. I think you're making great sense. So, and we see these things that we think are going to happen that are really bad, and you never know. It might be for the best.
Could be.
It could not be, but I mean, I've been fired 3 times, and every time it sucked, but it's turned out to be better than what I was dealing with before.
Wow, I did not know that. That is, I don't want to say that's great because it sounds terrible, but I'm glad that it worked out for you. So there you go. We have proof right here that the world doesn't end and it can actually get better if you stay in alignment with your values.
Yeah, and if I was in alignment with my values, I probably would have quit before I got fired from all 3 of those jobs. But fear had a grasp on me, and I tried to ride it out.
We all do.
Yeah.
Until you quit or you get fired. So, well, any other advice on the setting boundaries and not getting in trouble?
No, I think we've handled the question.
Well, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast if you enjoyed this. We are available wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Libsyn is where we are hosting our podcast right now. We
Apple,
would love to see you. Apple, YouTube, go check us out. Wherever you want us to be, we are, as much as we can be. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks. Have a great day.